Hello, everybody, and welcome back to episode number 138 of Phil at the Movies. I'm your host, Phil Walsh, where the show is always for the love of movies. And on that note, I am happy to welcome back a frequent guest of the show, Mr. Chris Evans of Gathering of the Geeks. Chris, welcome back, buddy.
Always good to be here. I'm working toward breaking the Alec Baldwin appearance
I,
thing.
you are very, very close. I'm printing the mugs as we speak. You'll
Cool.
have your jacket plaque. So
Oh, I get a
once,
jacket?
yeah, oh yeah, again, very all the pomp and circumstance for being the top running recurring guest on the show. So again, I'm not sure what that will get you into for clubs or whatnot, but just try hard, try as you might at the door. It may happen, but.
1 to 54.
There we go. That's right. That's right. Well, today, everybody, going to be talking about yet again another horror film. I have to say, 2024 has been a killer year for the genre and across the spectrum. You've got, on the one hand, a brilliant film like The Substance, which I talked about a few weeks ago, which is a perfect body horror, gross out film with a really compelling story and terrific performances. On the other hand, you've got one of my favorite films of the year, no surprise, Long Legs, which is Satanic Panic meets Silence of the Lambs. I mean, just it's been a hell of a year, and we're not done yet. We still have Nosferatu in December, which I know you, Chris, are looking forward to that as well as I am.
My level of excitement is disgusting.
You saw you didn't see the coffin
It's they
poster. It was,
they have it here in town, but it's at a theater that I don't normally go to because it's quite a ways from me, and
mhm,
it's the Cinemark, and I usually just go to AMC's. But
for
I
sure.
if I'm ever in the area, I will walk in because I want to see that coffin,
Right.
and I'm gonna have to assemble a team to help me smuggle that coffin out of this theater.
Well, you can count me in for that. I will help you with any way possible. For those listening, if you haven't seen it, it's all over social media. But one of the marketing tricks for Nosferatu is they have basically made a coffin in the form of a poster. And I mean, just looking at the images, this is not some small little cardboard box style coffin. I mean, they really went to town with it, and uh, early reviews have started to, or reactions, I should say, have started to trickle in, and it does appear like we are in for a gothic nightmare, a gothic treat, if you will. And again, I have been advocating a return to form when it comes to vampire films, kind of in that Hammer or early Universal format, and this definitely seems to be a return to a vampire that is a creature of the night and terrifying. And again, it's Bill Skarsgård as Nosferatu or as Count Orlok. So
Mhm.
I don't think we can lose there. But again, we'll save more of that for later on. That'll be coming out next month. So again, if you you need your fix for a good vampire film and you've been waiting on some of the other ones, go see Nosferatu. I think that one is going to live up to all of the expectations and then some. But today we're going to be talking about another horror film. It's funny. I was going over I mean, I'm in the process of working out my favorite films of the year so far, and I'm both amazed and delighted because horror continues to rank up very, very highly. I mean, I think at this point I'm like at six or seven horror films already for 2024, and I'm expecting that'll continue to grow before the year is out. But I can easily say the film that we're about to talk about now is going to make my list this year. And the film is Heretic. It stars the multi-talented Hugh Grant as well as Sophie Thatcher and Chloe East. And just to give a rundown quickly of the plot before Chris and I start discussing the film and the uh, the outcome, if you will. The story involves two young missionaries who become ensnared in a deadly game of cat and mouse when they knock on the door of the diabolical Mr. Reed, played by Hugh Grant. Trapped in his home, they must turn to their faith if they want to make it out alive. Chris, I will start with you because I know, much like myself, you're a you're a little bit of a fan of Mr. Hugh Grant, so I know this movie was definitely something that you were excited to see. Right off the bat, what were your initial reactions to Heretic?
Uh, so like as soon as the movie started, I was in basically. Yes, I love Hugh Grant. He's been one of my favorite actors forever, and so I was really excited to see this. And it's the first time you see him on screen is akin to I'm going to compare it to Longlegs in a way. The first time you see Nicolas Cage, it's the same kind of reaction. Like you know you are in for something special from their performance, just from that initial glimpse at them. And Hugh Grant just delivers so hard in this movie. And it's crazy because one of my initial thoughts about it was he doesn't do anything differently. It's still just Hugh Grant being charming. But because of the way the movie's framed in the story, I guess he fits the diabolical adjective there. He is something else. But initially, like as soon as we were out here, I was like, this is one of my favorite movies of the year. And I know that's hyperbolic at the moment. That's hyperbole, whatever you want to say. But it's just like instant classic to me. It has this vibe, kind of like an old school horror movie, which I really appreciate. I like older horror that were more atmospheric instead of we're showing you the devil or whatever. You know what I mean?
That's a really good point because I was thinking the same thing while I was watching it. And first off, I'm going to just co-sign everything you just said. Hyperbole be damned. This is one of the best films of the year. It's easily one of my favorite films of the year. Get that right out of the way and
Yeah.
and just put a stamp on it. No, but I was thinking while I was watching it, this does feel like a horror film that would have been made maybe 15 or 20
Mm-hmm.
years ago. There are twists and there are shocking elements in the film, but it doesn't go out of its way in the same manner that a lot of more recent horror films have gone, where they take you on a journey and then they ultimately try to either force feed their message, or it's almost like they're just hitting you over the head with it by the end of it, and then, oh, psych, we're gonna, do a final shock value twist in the last 30 seconds of the movie just because. And this felt like a return to form in a way where you said it perfectly. Atmosphere is such a key element to this film. I was thinking there were so many shots in the movie of just the exterior of the house or
Mm-hmm.
just shots down the corridor or again even just Hugh Grant sitting across from the sisters and I mean just talking to him, the lighting, everything
The
here.
angles.
Yeah, it was very unsettling in the best possible way.
It was really unsettling. And like I said, it's nothing like jumping out at you. It's a dialogue piece. The movie is 90%, maybe even more, just dialogue. But it's so captivating and you're kind of on the edge of your seat waiting for the shoe to drop because you know this guy is not good, but at the same time it's Hugh Grant, so you're kind of like, oh well, it's Hugh Grant, still Balloompa guy, or Notting Hill, About a Boy. It's the guy you know,
Right.
but he's not.
No, and you make a great comparison with Nicolas Cage.
Hmm.
I love it with an actor who we don't usually associate with the genre. And granted, Cage has done more horror than Hugh Grant, but it's nice when they play against type. And again, it's not like Hugh Grant is, wearing prosthetics or, being, obviously creepy from the first set. He's very charming and he draws you in with his classic, wit and demeanor. I mean, the Jar Jar Binks impression that he does. I mean, Sister Barnes and Sister Paxton, but they're sitting there like, dumbfounded, like, what the hell is this
Right.
guy doing? But it was brilliant.
It was, and that this speaks to the way the movie flows because at that point it's already become creepy and you're worried for these characters, but you're still fixated on what this guy is doing. And it doesn't even seem out of character when he does that Jar Jar impression.
And that's the thing. It doesn't it doesn't feel like he's either, I mean, obviously he's playing a character, but he doesn't feel like he's overdoing it in a way. Like it's Hugh Grant in a horror movie, and it's a credit to the script and the dialogue that it works so effortlessly. I mean, again, he's firing on all cylinders, but I mean, you said at the start, this is a dialogue heavy film, and it's kind of refreshing where we're relying less on the shock value of, a trap door opening or something terrifying happening in front of your face. It's instead just the simple conversations that are going on. Like at the beginning when they're led into the house, these two women, they're missionaries for the Mormon church. And again, right off the bat, he's sort of like he's a bumbler. He's very, it's Hugh Grant. It's Hugh Grant. Again, very charming, and he invites them into his home, and they're there to talk about the church and finding their Lord, his Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And right off the bat, you get this vibe because the house is, it's not like it's a an ugly home. It's just weird inside. It's weirdly laid out.
it it kind of feels like the home was built in 1963 and was never updated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even down to the lights, which are controlled by a timer on
Yeah,
the
I know.
wall.
I know.
And he makes an interesting comment right at the start that the house has metal and stuff throughout the walls,
Right.
which is not a common thing.
No. Which
Um,
again, great foreshadowing for later
Excellent
on.
foreshadowing because you don't even think about it as a viewer. You're just like the girl's like, oh, okay, cool. You know,
Yes.
you just walk in.
And then because they're immediately saying, are you married to, is your wife on, because we have to have somebody else with us in the room. And he's like, oh yeah, she's in the next room, baking blueberry pies. And again, it's the way in which he's delivering it where it's funny, but it's also deeply unsettling because right off the bat his wife isn't in the next room. There's no blueberry pies being made in the oven. Like this
No.
is all some kind of a ploy. But again, it's the journey that we're going on, and it's a lot of this back and forth. He's coming back with, you know, Coca-Cola, and of course, they can't drink caffeine, and he's like, "Oh, I should have realized that," and offered you water, and of course, it's continuous back and forth, and right at this sort of midpoint, they can smell the blueberry pies um, cooking, but of course, we soon realize there is no blueberry pie. The smell of the blueberry pie is from the blueberry scented candle that is across from them on the coffee table. And that's when the tables turn, everybody. And uh, uh, Sister Bards and Sister Paxton both realize at that moment they need to get the hell out of here. And again, the way in which this story unfolds, it's all neatly arranged. Like everything keeps building from one moment to the next. It's again, it's screenwriting 101, but it's done in such an effortless way. Like again, we know that there's no blueberry pies, but again, the revelation of the candle, the mention of the metal in the walls and in the ceilings, which then disable their cell phones when they try to use them, the way the door is locked. I mean, again, all those little intricacies that you don't think of any, as much as more than just passing details, but
Mm-hmm.
then
It's
once it
dialogue.
all, yeah, it all plays out so spectacularly. And again, I mean, just the tension was palpable. I mean, it's
Mm.
palpable from the minute they enter the house, but even then, once they realize that shit has hit the fan, it just continues to build and build and build till we ultimately get to what Mr. Reed's true
Mm.
intentions are. And Chris, I'll let you start with there. What do you think of this whole, I'll just say it, diabolical plan of a fanatic? I mean, this guy is not religious in any sense of the word, but he is
No, no,
truly
definitely.
obsessed by all religions and sort of the internal doctrines and measures of control that he alludes to, and really puts our lead characters through the rigors of an experiment. I mean, this is a game of cat and mouse, but it really
It is.
is a story about faith and exactly what do you believe and what should you believe. So feel free to unpack anything with that with what I've laid out there.
I think first off, one of the brilliant things this movie does, and I'm going to use that word for this because it deserves it. The dialogue heavy opening, like I think it's the first 45 minutes ish. It's it is laid out so well that when the twist happens, it hits so incredibly hard and it's fitting. You don't even think twice about it. You're just with it for the ride. And it feels like such a proper payoff, like, oh, this is where this is going. So when they go down into that like library makeshift altar room and he starts pulling out the board games and doing that whole charade, like, whoa, this is something. And the performance of Hugh Grant, of course, like we said, is amazing, but also it's worth mentioning uh, Sophie Thatcher
Yeah,
and Chloe East are fantastic as well. They hold their own against this actor. And once the experiment starts, because we it's introduced as one of these doors will get you outside. That
right,
is the idea. You go through one door on the left, door on the right, they'll let you out. One is marked with belief, one is marked with disbelief. We as the viewer know there is no door.
right.
One of the characters knows there is no door. The other character wants to believe,
Yeah.
which makes this, I don't want to use the word tragic, but it makes it more sad
Mm,
because this one character wanted to believe so much that they would escape unscathed from what they've walked into.
mhm.
And then we get down to this basement, which we find out quickly both doors led to, which I love. It was such a subtle thing to show. And I don't think people realize it at first either that this is both doors.
Right.
And there was blueberry pie actually.
Yeah, I know. We
There,
do finally get blueberry pie.
yeah, and when you see, she didn't have a name, but a lady with the blueberry pie,
Right. The
it be
prophet, I think he calls her.
profit. Yeah, it becomes even more unsettling because now the movie is shifted.
Yeah.
We are not a dialogue piece anymore. We are full on atmospheric horror, and you fear for these characters now because now you don't know what Reed is about to do. We have no concept of what he's doing at this point.
That was a great moment where the film, I mean, quote unquote, great moment. I mean, not for the characters. No, but when they go into the basement, and I think that's the payoff of having such heavy dialogue at the
Mm-hmm.
start because it's not like they're just saying throwaway lines or nonsense. Everything they are talking about vis-a-vis religion, internal doctrine, sort of equating to Judaism and Catholicism, Islam, and the way he
Jedi.
plays it all. Yeah, again, he plays it all out as it's basically one big con when they finally get down into the basement and they are presented with this woman who he says is a prophet and is going to, miraculously be resurrected tonight, despite having eaten a blueberry pie, which is tainted and poisoned. The movie does such a 360 because it's now no longer like a philosophical battle of wits that we're dealing with in the library. Now it really is a game of survival because, you know, we as the audience, the characters don't, but we know this isn't some prophet. This is some lady that he's clearly got, holed up in his house somewhere. And of course, that's just the tip of the iceberg with what's going on here. It's not just one person being being held against their will, but it's an entire uh basement full of captors and or captives, and it really, I mean, it just takes the film to such another place where it goes beyond sort of a theological, do you believe, do you not believe, type of battle into something much more menacing that when you
Sinister.
pair it with sort of the internal battles and doctrines of religion versus non-religion, it makes it that much more frightening. And I mean, it results in Hugh Grant giving a performance and a character that is, I mean, just downright terrifying. Like, and again, I think that's the charm of it. I mean, he lures you in with his demeanor and his Hugh Grant stylings, but like once we make that shift, I mean, I didn't know what was going to happen. I'm like, oh Jesus, like I mean, how are they going to get out of this? And spoiler alert, right now, everybody, just so you can if you haven't seen the film, which if you haven't seen it and you are a fan of the genre, go see it right away because this is definitely worth your time. But I have to say, like when Mr. Reed kills, oh, he doesn't really, maybe he doesn't really kill her in that moment, but when
Quotation
he,
kills.
yeah, when he slits the throat of Barnes, like, I mean, I remember in my theater that got a massive reaction because
Yeah.
you don't see that coming. You figure, okay, they're going to figure out some way to maybe get away from him, and it'll be like another game of cat and mouse. But like the movie pulls no punches, and like, yep, she gets her throat slit.
Actually, at first though, I thought Paxton did that.
Oh, to him?
Yeah, no, no, I thought it was Sister Paxton who cut her throat
Oh, okay,
for a
okay,
second
yep.
because you see the throat and then it
That's
cuts
right.
to her
Yeah,
face.
yep.
Like, did she just kill her?
Right.
Like, this just got crazier.
No, but yeah, that actually would have been that would have been quite a twist.
Yeah, I don't even know where that would have gone, but it
No,
was.
no, well, that's the thing. Like the movie confines you to, essentially it's one location. It's levels upon levels, but I like the idea that you feel that sense of claustrophobia, like they're trapped. Like no matter what happens, go up the
Yeah,
stairs, you aren't getting out of that basement unless it's deeper into the basement.
it kind of reminded me of Saw in a way, the first one,
Hmm. That's a
because it
good.
was confined to that one area, and how do we get out of here? It seems pretty hopeless.
Right, right,
Even with Hugh Grant's character, Mr. Reed, talking to them through basically a, I guess, a hole in the wall
right.
with a speaker in it,
Yeah.
and he's playing that song. And it was different, but there's a claustrophobic feeling and also just like a hopelessness to it, especially once Barnes is presumed dead.
Yeah.
Like, well, this other one has no shot because she's the more innocent of the two. That's the way it was set up.
Yeah.
Like, this one's dying any minute now.
No, I honestly thought at that point I said, okay, she's done, and this movie's just gonna really go completely bleak and show no sort of resurrection, if you will. But it doesn't. The movie again, it's sort of it just when you think all is sort of lost, if you will, you see kind of the inner strength of of Paxton where she's able to press on and really, you know, goes mano a mano with Mr. Reed. Like again, it goes back and forth between being a physical confrontation, but also a philosophical one. And I mean, just listening to Hugh Grant spout utter nonsense and ravings, like I mean, it's damn terrifying, but it's also really fun to watch because he is having such a ball with this script, and he's making it work in the only way he could. Like, I mean, I can't see any other actor I mean, I'm sure there probably could be, but like this feels so tailor-made to his sort of repertoire and skills that he is just shining 110% here.
I think it's one of those films where, yeah, you could cast anybody as Mr. Reed, but that doesn't mean it'll have the impact that it has. Because like you could have stuck maybe I don't know who's a popular actor right now. You just like Jake Gyllenhaal as Mr.
Right.
Reed, let's say. Would have been wacky, yeah, probably more wacky. He would have leaned
Yeah.
into it, but it would have been different. There's
Yeah.
something about the way Mr. Reed is portrayed here that really elevates the insanity that we are seeing unfold. Like there's a scene where he pulls out a pen and a paper, like a little pad, a
Yeah.
notepad, and he's on the floor getting ready to write. What did you see? What did you hear?
Yeah.
Somebody's dead. And he's excited and he's getting ready to write stuff.
Yeah.
And there's something about that that just it kind of it speaks for the whole movie. This is a weird concept
Hmm.
that maybe shouldn't work, but everybody's firing on all cylinders and there's so much going on, it just works. It does.
Yeah, it really has no business being as good as it is. Like, I mean, it
No.
really, again, it's a simple, if you boil it down, it's a game of cat and mouse. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you've got the other trappings and window dressing of sorts, but I mean, this is a game of cat and mouse. And when you're confined to one location, you do limit yourself. Like it's not like they're being chased through the wilderness and Hugh Grant is coming after them on a tractor or something like it's which I mean
I'd
that
like
would
to see
be
that though.
that would be entertaining, I know. But it works, and again, I think it's a testament to all of the performances and just the strength of the dialogue because
Yeah.
particularly when they're in the library and they're sort of having those discussions, like even though Grant is sort of acting like a maniac at points and just sort of spouting nonsense. Like there are those like kernel of truths that just sort of, he peppers in throughout where it's like it really does almost in a way shine the light on the audience and makes you put yourself in the place of the characters and be like, how would I respond in this
Mm-hmm.
situation? Again, these are two young, I mean, one is a little bit more experienced, shall we say, but I mean, these are still, fairly naive girls who have been, brought up in their faith and they sort of know nothing else. They don't, they sort of know only as they have sort of been taught. And it's a very interesting dichotomy because it's like, all right, what do you believe? What should we believe? Who should we believe? And I like how the movie doesn't go in a direction to like endorse any sort of like answer when it comes to faith and religion. Like I think in a lot of ways it's
Not preachy.
yeah, you put into it or you take out of it what your own situation is when it comes to faith. And I mean, I think that's the best way to work with a film like this. Like this is not, the devil is behind all of this and the machinations,
Mm-hmm.
good versus evil. Like it is a much more psychological, almost character study in a way of all three of these people because every one of them is put under the microscope.
I would totally agree with that. It is like a character study, but split three ways.
Yeah,
Because even when it gets sort of crazy, when the switch happens, not the I mean the body switch. When
right.
that happens, it's still very much about the characters and what actually occurs after they figure out the body thing. I thought was another stroke of genius because it's like the movie took another turn into another genre, but it doesn't lose any steam.
Right.
It just carries on properly. And again, the setup to this makes it that's what makes it work because we spent so much time with the details, with the characters. So when you see her running through this tunnel underneath the house, you are both worried for her and kind of hope like, okay, maybe he wasn't lying. You want him to have been truthful that there is a way out of this house through the
Right.
basement,
Right. And
which
and
there wasn't.
no, it's all it's I mean it's a vicious circle. by
like a
the
labyrinth, which is cool because he had that model built, and they
yeah,
showed us the model.
that was so cool.
It was. They showed us. That's another thing about I love about this movie. The details matter. There's no wasted dialogue, no wasted shots. If you pay attention to this movie, every detail, it is laid out for you. And I love that.
Now I can't wait to watch it again just so I can pay attention to all
Hmm.
the little moments. Again, just like, you don't think of anything at the start, but like, his obsession with the light timers or again, even like just the model that he's got, it's of the whole house and the basement and
The
the
entire labyrinth.
corridors. Yeah, the whole thing is right there. And again, those little moments are just beautiful in a film like this because it implies there's a great rewatch value to it. I mean, that's why I love horror films. You can always go back to them and find something new on each viewing.
Hmm. Especially one like this, which really rewards you, I think, for paying attention. And also, I I don't want to say that his rantings are right or wrong, but they're
No,
damn interesting.
that's no, they're provocative. I mean, this is not just movie villain rantings here. Like, I mean, it is,
No,
but it's much deeper than that. Like
this is
he's
this is not a Bond villain monologuing to James Bond. You know,
right, right. I mean, that's why I said earlier that there's these, kernels of truth that he sort of like is peppered into the dialogue. And yeah, I mean, it's a very provocative film, which again, it really does ask a lot of its audience, not in a way where there's necessarily heavy lifting or homework, but it certainly it makes you think. It really does sort of put everything into kind of a broader perspective. And again, the movie doesn't endorse or not endorse, one way or the other, but it makes you sort of look at everything and sort of like pay attention, if you will,
hmm
because again, I think that's the charm of Hugh Grant. He makes all of this sort of, you know, radical nonsense, very interesting to sort of listen to and digest, even as, he's holding a, switchblade to somebody's throat.
But even the way he explained like the Monopoly thing, it makes it easier to understand and grip onto. You know,
Oh yeah, no, I mean that's the thing. There's no waste here. Everything is spelled out to
purposeful.
deliver whatever point the film is ultimately trying to make. I mean, I'm jumping around a little bit here, but uh I was reading that the directors, I want to just get their name, Scott Beck and Brian Woods, they have decided to keep a lid on what they believe the actual ending of this movie is. And I'll just spell it out to everybody, in case, again, if you haven't seen it, and you don't want to be spoiled, step away from the podcast. But at the end of the film, ultimately, Paxton goes and is able to, injure Reed, but she doesn't kill him off. And just as she has been injured and it looks like all is lost, Barnes, miraculously rallies at the last minute and takes him down in a pretty brutal way. It's like a 2x4 with some rusted nails right to the head. I mean, it was that also got a reaction to
Shocking.
the audience. And again, wonderful little foreshadowing because that piece of board came off as they were trying to originally escape, and was tucked behind a column or something. But
Safekeeping.
yeah, that's right. But yeah, so he's done. Mr. Reed dies. Barnes ultimately succumbs to her wounds, and Paxton manages to get out of the house and escape. And while she is outside, a butterfly lands on her hand. And again, this goes back to the mention of the brilliant use of dialogue and foreshadowing. Early on, before everything goes to hell and a literal handbasket, they're in there having a conversation with Reed in the living room, and she makes a mention of how one day if she could be reincarnated, she would like to appear as a butterfly that lands on the hand of a loved one. And so the butterfly appears and fly and lands on her hand right at the end of the film. And then it flies away, it vanishes, and the movie ends. There is a lot of debate, discussion about what does this mean because it's meant to be set, kind of in the winter months. There's some snow and rain, and so it's not necessarily, ideal time for butterflies. Um, the directors have said they know what the ending is, but they don't want to say fully because much like the film itself, they want to have that two-door option for the audience. And it ultimately kind of comes down to what you think it is or isn't. What I guess I would say to you, Chris, what did you think of that ending? Did you come away thinking either, all right, she ultimately succumbed to her wounds and had died, and then this is just the sort of the manifestation of her reincarnation, or did you take it literally?
I didn't know there was controversy about this. I
Yeah.
I just took it as this was Paxton going back to wanting to believe. So
Mhm.
she thinks she sees the butterfly. And she of course would think that it's Barnes saying hello.
Right.
And to me that lines up with the way Paxton was presented as very much the innocent one, the believing one. There's nothing wrong with anything in these texts. Everything is as it should be.
Right.
So it would make sense to me that, oh, I'm gonna see Barnes on my finger.
That was what I took from it. It made sense when you looked at the whole context of her character that this would be the inevitable conclusion that she would, she wants to still believe despite everything that has happened to her, all, matter and evidence to the contrary. She still has her faith. And I think it's sort of interesting again when they're first picking the door, she's the one that goes to I think it's the disbelief uh option. Am I remembering that correctly?
I thought she goes to the belief option.
Maybe it was I might have
I
it
can't
mixed.
remember.
Regardless, I mean, she's the one that sort of has
Oh
that.
no, she does. She tries because she thinks it's what Reed wants because it
Yeah,
says
she's
pick the
like,
right
yeah,
door, and that's on the right.
she's kind of
That's right.
thinking what he wants, or wants them to
Mm.
pick. And again, just sort of that naivete and sort of like trusting in, the elder, trusting in, a supposed authority figure. I thought that was really all kind of in keeping with her character. And I
Mm.
kind of like that even though she gets her stabs into to
Mm.
Reed, I like how it was Barnes who at the end finished him off. I thought that was a very, fitting end both for her character, but also in the story that we've been following vis-a-vis Paxton.
I also like that she was praying for him as well.
Yes. Yes.
That was a really nice touch. She was praying for him because she didn't try to when he was crawling up to murder her, like to finish her off. She wasn't responding to it. She was just praying.
Yeah.
And it does make more sense for Barnes, well, not to come back to life, of course, but to finish him off, especially because for whatever reason he was paying extra close attention to her throughout the movie,
Right.
which you do notice. Again, the dialogue matters
Yeah.
and the shots matter because they show him just glancing at her when she does certain things. So I really like that addition to Paxton's character that she was still praying for him despite everything she'd seen.
Yeah.
He'd seen the women in cages and
Hmm.
understood that he keeps trying to do this experiment
Yeah.
because that's what it is. He's doing some kind of experiment trying to. I'm not even sure what he was trying to accomplish, really.
No, and that's the beauty of it. Like he lays out what he thinks is a logical plan,
Mm-hmm.
but it's totally illogical. Like what are you doing here, man? I mean, you're just a sick weirdo at the
Yeah,
end of the day. Like you're just a freak. And he's got this like method to his own madness. And again, it's one of the best villainous performances I have seen this year. Probably next to Long Legs, just in terms of the creep factor and the logic only makes sense to that person. But
Hmm.
yet what they are saying carries, like, it's not, as you said, this is not, Blofeld, monologuing and some, long riff. The words that these characters are saying, whether it's Reed or Longlegs, there's that element of truth sort of beneath all of the nonsense that
Hmm.
makes them that much more sinister and compelling to watch.
That's the main thing there. He's compelling to watch.
Yeah.
And what also helps, we may have downplayed the performance of the two ladies, but they really are holding their own with him, and they
Mhm.
also elevate this material, and
I
especially because they're so different.
I was going to say, because they don't have a long list of credits to their names. I mean, they both have really just um, sort of started out. I mean, I know Sophie or no, Chloe East was most recently in the Fablemans. She had a small role towards the end of the film. She was the girlfriend character for Sammy.
Oh, I
Yeah.
thought she was familiar. I couldn't figure out what I knew
Yeah,
her
no,
from.
I was saying to myself, I said, no, I've seen her before, but I couldn't place her, and then found out afterwards, and
What a
then
great start for her.
oh yeah, no, yeah, you're gonna start, with any place, start with Steven Spielberg. But yeah, Sophie Thatcher, she's been on the show Yellow Jackets, and she was also in the book of Boba Fett. So I mean, they have some credits to their name, but I mean, you said it, you're going up, against Hugh Grant. Like, I mean, this is a a master class in acting, and they they hold their own remarkably well, and they're such different performances.
Yes.
Again, Paxton is very much, more of a, a worldly and, seasoned individual, whereas again, there's that naivete to Paxton, and they clash and sort of complement each other really well, and that's all plays itself out, particularly once they both are in the dungeon, and
Hmm.
you're sort of seeing their mindsets both at work and sort of butt heads with each other at the same time. I mean, even that moment when they first see that the dead body has been, is there. Paxton is the one that is convinced the body has already moved, and
Yeah.
Barnes is like, no, no, it's your imagination. And again, it's that kind of, internal, battle, if you will, like what is real, what's not real. Do you believe your eyes? Do you believe on faith? I mean, there's so much going on here. Like, you could, I mean, literally take it scene by scene and have like a 3 hour discussion just on the blueberry pie dialogue.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all just so well done, and they're like an odd couple pairing, which I appreciate because you could have just cast like two similar type of character or made or written two similar characters.
Yeah,
But I think doing it this way worked. And one of the other cool things about this film is you would think Barnes is the one that's going to walk out of that house,
right. I
especially because when the movie starts, we see Paxton first.
Yep.
And in that scene, Paxton is shown to be the naive one. She's shown to be the one that's less, I don't know, street savvy. We'll call it maybe.
Yeah, I mean, even their dialogue at the start, where she's, talking about pornos, and just like, again, she's speaking with such a, a naivete, where, like, I figured at the start, okay, she won't make it out of the first act.
Exactly. You automatically think, okay, this one's died.
Yeah, I said, this is cannon fodder. Unfortunately, she's done. But no, I mean, again, she becomes really the strength of the movie, and she ultimately, cracks the code, if you could call it that, of whatever the hell Mr. Reed is trying to do
Yeah.
here. Like, I like it when she does have that moment where she turns the tables on
Mm-hmm.
him before she, pulls out the letter opener, and, gives him one to the neck. I mean, it was a great moment where, you just sort of see this battle of the wills, and she has him, like, she has called his bluff, if you will.
Yeah, with just a little bit of violence.
Just a touch,
Just
just a
a
touch,
little bit.
just a
It went
touch.
the blade went through and through. It was pretty cool.
Again, there's a lot of knife work in this movie that definitely catches you by surprise.
And it's I'm not even sure how how they survive some of the things they survive.
I know, like I mean, he gets it right into like the his thorax, and I mean, I said, boy, he's doing pretty good because he like pulls the blade out
Yeah,
of
he's
his
all
neck.
right. And not only did Barnes initially survive having her throat cut, he also cuts into her arm and digs.
Yeah, and that was another scene that was like, holy shit, they're going for it here.
And again, none of the characters missed a beat, or the two living characters anyway.
Right? No, it's
They just kept going.
no, that's the there's no time. It's all adrenaline from
Busy
start to
Tuesday
finish.
afternoon.
That's right. Just a lazy
but
Tuesday.
but as a viewer, you're on the edge of your seat. The tension is insane during pretty much this whole movie. As soon as he opens the door, you're already on edge because you know as the viewer.
No, even the scene at the start before they go and arrive at his house when they have that interaction with the it's like the college girls
Oh
and
yeah,
on the
the Mexican
sidewalk.
offense.
Yeah, and it's like it really does set up a an uneasy balance from then on because like you know right away these two characters are are unsafe. There's
Mhm.
some like they're in constant,
They're out
you
of
know,
their league.
day. Yeah, exactly. They're not ready for this world.
No, and it's kind of. I didn't realize that was Topher Grace at first.
Wait a minute.
That's Topher Grace, yes.
I did not know that. Well,
And you watch him going to them. It's like, okay, well, I guess he's gonna come looking for him, right?
I'll be
And then
damned.
when he finally does, it's like, well, no, they're not here. Okay, bye. And then when he
Yeah.
comes back, like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Nope, he's just
No.
there to drop off a pamphlet.
Yeah. I was like, wow. Real I that was some beautiful writing with
Mm-hmm.
that. I really liked that moment because you again, you're right. You expect him to be the hero or at least go down
You would have
trying.
thought.
Yeah. And no, he just yeah, when he came back, I'm like, oh, okay. He's heard something or you know, something
I
his
thought he saw the
sense
bikes because we hadn't seen the
that's
bikes.
yeah, no, I guess his spidey sense wasn't working or something, but
No,
um
he was done.
yeah, no, here's your pamphlet. Like, I did not realize that was Topher Grace.
Yeah, I was like, is that Topher Grace? And then when I got home, I was like, that was
I
Topher
it's
Grace.
funny. I thought it was him, and I it was funny. I now that I think about it, I knew he was in this movie, but I was not expecting him in that capacity.
I didn't know he was in it, and if his name was listed in the credits, I didn't even notice it at the start.
No, I didn't. I know. I yeah. I feel I feel like I was asleep at the switch there, but I'll chalk it up to I was so engrossed in the movie
That's what,
from.
yeah, you just get so into it
That's what it
from
is.
this
It
opening
does.
scene.
Yeah. It draws you in, and it's like a number of horror films for me this year where they're all so different in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything. I mean, they're similar in the sense you're you know united through the performances or the you know the aesthetic or you know cinematography, but like every single one of them has had a different message. There's been a different theme or idea that's being explored, and I mean that to me is a win-win, particularly being a fan of the genre.
I agree. This one particularly hits home for me because I love movies that are so dialogue heavy.
Hmm.
Like Clerks is one of my favorites because of that. Barcelona, stuff like that, where it's a lot of dialogue, and when dialogue works, it really elevates a movie, I think. And in the case of horror, we don't get a lot of stuff like this. I can't think of another horror movie that is as dialogue heavy without something crazy happening, in between or something.
Yeah, I would be hard pressed to think of one because most of the time you get a exposition dump
Mm-hmm.
at the start of the film or a little bit peppered here and there. But I mean, most of the time when you go to a horror film, it's about the event. It's the fun house or the haunted house.
Or
It's
the killings or
right, exactly. You know, how many ways, you know, can somebody die? You know, I mean, and this is much more cerebral in a way. It
mm-hmm.
really does get under your skin. Like, I mean, again, I loved every minute of this movie, but yet I was disturbed as well. Like it's ominous just in the way that again, it's not meant to be. I mean, there's jarring moments, but it's a lot of it is just the dialogue and the way Hugh Grant both turns a phrase and then makes some kind of a sinister point. Like it hits you in the gut.
Yeah, and the look of it. So you mentioned we both talked about how the house looks a certain way, but it's the overall look of the film too. It has this dreary, sad look to it. And I don't want to say it's like a cheap look because it's not, but it has a very distinct style visually that drives the point home about this film. And I think that's also rare in a horror movie to kind of hit on every level. There's usually something like, well, I don't think this fit. No, I think everything works in this movie. To me, that this is like not to compare it again. This is like a long legs for me. I'm gonna put them on the same level, actually.
I would agree with that because my reaction to this film was nearly identical to how I felt about Long Legs.
Mm-hmm.
It just everything works in this movie. And I mean, to make that point about the dreariness, I love how the only time we see a glimmer of sunlight is at the final like 2 minutes of the movie after she
Yeah.
has escaped the house. Like everything else, it's cloudy, it's rainy, it's snowy, it's windswept. It has all the perfect trappings that we associate with a horror film, but then it goes that extra mile.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty to look at, but there's also something that has to be said, and the way they deliver it, it's very effective. I mean, I will revisit this film many, many times. I already know that.
2024, you mentioned earlier, has been solid for horror, and there have been so many memorable films that have come out. But I think leading the pack, this is one of the ones that are leading that charge. I would say there's three particularly that stand out for me a ton, and this is firmly, it's there.
You mentioned long legs, obviously. What would be a third one? Not to
It's
put you on this.
Abigail.
That's fair. Okay, that's
By
fair.
default, but I feel like Nosferatu might kind of knock Abigail out of the top three. No offense to Abigail.
No, I hear you there. No, I will hold off on naming a third film because I have a feeling Nosferatu is going to be somewhere in that mix.
I hope it is.
I know, I guess knock on wood at this point, but I don't think we have a Joker folio on our hands with that one. But I'm sorry, I had to just get that out of the system.
You say that, and I heard the line from Talladega Nights, "Don't you put that evil on me, Bobby."
That's right. No, I
Don't
know,
put that
but
evil on me.
I won't. No, I take it back. I take it back. Strike that from the record. No. Chris, before we move on to the next and final segment, any last thoughts on the film as a whole? I mean, like I said, we could do an entire episode just based on the first act of this film. I mean, the
Yeah.
whole exchange in the library slash altar room. I
Whatever
mean,
it
it's
is.
some of the best dialogue of any movie this year. And I mean that sincerely. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's so effective and gripping and gets to a point.
This is a movie I'm glad we're not alone on because the reviews are also glowing for this.
Yeah.
Everybody seems to be on the same page about it. And I think that speaks volumes for the quality of this thing. It is that good. And it's not just good because one thing or, it's the entire package. Piece by piece, it elevates it from, again, Hugh Grant's performance to just the wacky nature of what it actually is once it gets going, the small details, even down to the things that you don't think about as you're watching. Because, like, you don't think about why is he taking so long to open the door after we've seen him behind the
Right.
glass?
Right.
You don't think about that. And then you see it later on. Oh, because he's got to mess with the thing.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
bikes, it's everything. This is a wonderful horror film. I mean, that's a fun word for horror. Wonderful. It's a wonderful horror film. And this is a movie, whereas a lot of the horror films this year, I think, have been intense with either gore or some kind of like Long Legs is intense atmospheric stuff.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's not really something you'd recommend to someone who doesn't normally watch horror. Or Terrifier 3.
No, no.
This falls uh, kind of falls in line with the horror movie you could watch with a group and
Mm,
they'd probably be okay. And I think that also speaks a lot for it because the plot is so tight, the dialogue is well written. It's not going to make anybody throw up.
no,
You're not going to get sick watching it.
no.
It's just a good time at the movies.
Yeah, it's as I said, it feels like a throwback to an older era where again, it's a hour and 40-minute film. It is airtight. There is not an ounce of fat on the story. Everything leads to the inevitable point. There's so much intricacy with the details and foreshadowing. The dialogue is immaculate. Again, everything about this film, to use that word again, is immaculate. It just it works. It works more, probably more so than it honestly should. But they just found that secret sauce, and it's delightfully terrifying in every sense of the word. And again, I love that it's not a gross out horror film. It's not
Right.
a slasher. It's not again like a Long Legs where there's a lot of heavy atmosphere. There is atmosphere here, but this is much more of a in a lot of ways it's almost more of a thriller than sort of a straight horror, but it does hit all of those beats, and it is accessible, I think. And I think that's why you see audiences reacting so strongly, as well as the critics. I mean, it's not all the time where you see both, you know, both sides come together. And again, horror is the great equalizer.
It's great for the whole family. Watch it on Thanksgiving. It'll probably be
I
on digital by then anyway.
at this point, nothing would surprise me, and I endorse that idea. Make this your Thanksgiving watch, everybody. Heretic is
There's pie.
believe me, there we go. So hey, it's got a Thanksgiving theme right there, and it's sort of set in the winter months. So I mean, that's checking all the boxes for me. And I mean, who wouldn't want to have Hugh Grant over for Thanksgiving? I think that would be a hoot and a half.
I'd even take this one. He's got a lot of fun stuff to say.
Again, it would be entertaining.
He's
That much is clear.
he can do the Jar Jar Binks impression.
That's all I need in my life right there. That, forget, talking about the weather or something around the table. Have a Jar Jar Binks impression.
I didn't even know he could do a
I
Jar Jar Binks
again,
impression.
Hugh Grant never ceases to amaze how this man does not have an Oscar win. I mean, it's sacrilegious at this point.
On that note,
Yeah.
I would. There's a question for you.
Yeah,
We know horror is not recognized by the Academy.
unfortunately.
Do you think this year we may have an exception? Because I think we've had some strong performances.
I I go back and forth. The real telltale will be what happens at the Golden Globes.
Mm,
Um, Neon is making a strong push for Nicolas Cage.
yeah, they
I
are.
think A24 would be wise to make a push for Hugh Grant. And I mean it like if there was a year for horror to be recognized, and it's I mean again, I'm not trying to like, say, oh, poor horror, they never get their due, but like, it would be nice to see some recognition for the genre at large. And I think this year there's a lot to choose from. I I mean, I won't get my hopes up, but it wouldn't surprise me. Just again, based on the performances, whether you're watching Nicolas Cage in Longlegs, or certainly Hugh Grant in in Heretic. If I had to put a guess on either him or Cage, my guess is Grant would probably get it over Cage.
That's my
And
guess too.
again, that's not dismissing Cage, but I think if push came to shove, I could see Grant getting some nomination. Maybe it's starting at the Golden Globes, and then I mean, who knows what happens? But
I think
again,
they'd see it like the Hannibal Lecter type thing and say,
that's
okay,
the thing. It's very much in that mold. Whereas again, Long Legs, it's I mean, it's a master class in a performance, but
Yeah.
it is a lot. Like
It,
that's not for the faint of heart.
no, you can't watch that. Oh, this is the first horror movie I've ever seen. Not
No,
gonna.
no. Again, if you were just starting out with horror, I think Heretic is honestly a perfect entry point.
And then watch
Long let
Hereditary.
Right, yeah, there we go. Really make the swing. I think that's perfect. That's a great companion piece right there. Uh, but yeah, that does it, everybody, for our discussion on Heretic. Easily, again, I think one of the best horror films of the year, in addition to being one of the better films. I knew I would enjoy this film just based on the marketing and, of course, having Hugh Grant in it, but I did not expect to enjoy it as much as I did. Again, 2024 still has some surprises left in it, and that is fine by me. But moving right along to some other surprises, because folks, I hope you're sitting down for this, but Christopher Nolan has another movie in the works, and it's little under 2 years away, July 2026. The next film from the Academy Award winning director. I can now say that Academy Award winner Christopher Nolan. That feels good to say. He is working on his next film. He will write and direct it. It will be produced through Universal Studios, so he has certainly found a home there. Yay for them. Too bad for Warner Brothers, but you know what? They let him go. So it's on them as far as I'm concerned. But details are scarce. We do not know much, if anything, about the plot. There are rumors and whispers of maybe it's a vampire movie set in the 1920s. Maybe it is about two brothers going on a helicopter mission. I mean, who knows? I mean, there could be time travel in it for all we know. This is Christopher Nolan that we're talking about. So the sky is really the limit. Um, Before we get into some of the casting announcements, Chris, do you have, I guess I would say this. Do you have a wish list for what type of film or genre you would like to see Christopher Nolan tackle with this next film or in the future?
I think Nolan is a director that can do it all. We are both large fans of him. And when it's funny how the dominoes fell on this one. When it was rumored for horror, I was like, yes, I love it. Then when it was rumored for vampires, like, can this get even better? And then we got the cast with Tom Holland and Matt Damon. I'm in. So that would be the wish list now. I want the vampire horror film.
That would be something. Again, Christopher Nolan has dabbled in horror in many of his films, but to see him go full horror, I think would be worth the price of admission.
That would be a treat. And he hasn't. There's not a genre he's attempted that hasn't worked for him yet. And
Uh,
that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I always sort of laugh when people make the criticism, oh, he makes the same movie over and over again. Folks, Tenet is not the same as Batman Begins. The
And
Prestige is
Dunkirk.
not the same as Dunk. Exactly. I mean, the guy has tackled many, many different genres, and I mean, as far as we're concerned, I think I can speak for the both of us. He has exceeded in all counts. But
I think if you can manage to make a 3 hour film about the creation of the nuclear bomb
exactly.
and everybody love it, you could probably do whatever you want.
The sky has always been the limit for Christopher Nolan, but now it truly is the limit at this point, maybe even more so.
Mhm.
But speaking of the cast, you mentioned Tom Holland is set to star in this film along with Matt Damon. We got a few more casting announcements over the weekend. Anne Hathaway is returning. This will be her third installment in a Christopher Nolan film. So, hey, it's great to have her back working with Christopher Nolan. There's a wonderful. I mean, it's not necessarily wonderful in the context of what was going on with her career at the time, but she really credits Christopher Nolan for kind of giving her a. It's sort of funny to say giving her a break, if you will. I mean, given that she had won an Academy Award, but was, apparently, couldn't get a job, couldn't land an audition. But then Interstellar came along, and she was forever grateful for Christopher Nolan and his writing that role for her. But Anne Hathaway is coming back, so that's exciting. Also joining the list, Tom Holland's his better half, shall we say, Zendaya, who I must say she has been on my wish list for appearing in a Christopher Nolan film, and I'm getting my wish with that. So it's definitely going to be a stacked cast. I know we are just at the tip of the iceberg. I expect Gary Oldman will probably pop up in some
I thought
capacity.
I thought Lupita
Oh,
Nyong'o was
thank
also.
you. That's right. She was also added.
Oh,
So that's now, good God, we've got Damon, we've got Holland, we've got Zendaya, we've got Lupita. Am I missing anybody else?
Hathaway.
Hathaway. Oh my God, there we go. So we've already got five big names here, and I know we're just at the tip of the iceberg.
Hmm.
And I think
Yeah,
even Killian Murphy was saying he'd love to work with Christopher Nolan again.
I'm sure he would.
Which I mean, can you blame him? Can you blame him?
I agree though. I was gonna call him Gordon. Oldman will be in there somewhere too.
Yeah, there will be an appearance, and if Michael Caine wasn't retired, I could probably guarantee he would appear. But
I wish he'd come out of
I know,
retirement for
just one more
one,
time, one more time.
one with Nolan.
No, exactly. One more ride. One more ride. But no, I mean, nevertheless, we have another Christopher Nolan film in the works. Anyone who is following me on Twitter knows that I have started a countdown. We're now at 600 and I think 15 days or 614 days until the big release. So if you need a daily reminder, folks, I am your guy and I will keep you up to date as more developments come in because again this is already an anticipated film for me. We're a little over under 2 years away, and so I'm already starting the countdown. So needless to say, I'm a little excited for it. But yeah, that'll be a fun time for sure. Chris, one last thing, sort of an open-ended. In addition to Nosferatu, which I know we're both excited to see later this year, are there any other films coming out before 2024 closes that are on your must-see list?
You know, Nosferatu is pretty much the only one like I have to see it. I'm very interested in Gladiator. I
Mm,
love the first one, so Gladiator's on that list. But
yep.
yeah, I'm pretty sure it is off the top of my head. It's just Nosferatu.
That's
I'm
good.
very very excited. It's like Batman excitement level for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's another thing, folks, because I know we did a plug for it a couple of weeks ago, but what I had speculated has come to pass. There is going to be no reveal of Count Orlok until the film releases. And that is, of course, a brilliant stroke of genius because you want to savor that. Because if you've ever seen the original film or you just know the character, it's a very distinct look for a vampire. And I'm curious to see what exactly they are going to do with Count Orlok this time around. I'm sure it will honor the Max Shrek portrayal, but will be its own unique creation. And again, given that it's Bill Skarsgård, I know he's going to bring it in every way, shape, or form.
Yeah,
But
once he was cast, I think we were all sold.
it's a masterstroke. Again, the guy can do honestly no wrong as far as I'm concerned. And get all the little teases and reactions that have come out have just been wonderful music for the soul at this point. I this movie, I have high hopes for it. High hopes that it will deliver something. Just seeing the trailer the other night before Heretic was a another great tease. I mean, it's infuriating because again, some people have already seen the film, but it'll make it that much more worth the wait.
It's a pretty trailer too. This is gonna be a pretty movie.
That's the thing. Like, I mean, stylistically, like that's how I want to see vampire films again.
Hmm.
That look is again, it feels cliche in one way. So it's like, oh, we've got countless Hammer horror films or other workings, but like I don't know, there's just something classic about a vampire film with that look and aesthetic. It's not, putting Dracula in, circa 2010 or something.
New Orleans.
Right. There we go. That's right. Subtle reference there. Astute listeners will know what we're
Ding.
talking about. But no, we certainly there will be a lot to talk about when it comes to Nosferatu in the coming weeks. Again, this podcast has gone pretty much full horror for the last few months. Halloween is it's every day for me, so it makes sense. But again, it's a testament to 2024. Horror will never go out of fashion. Horror will never die. And so any chance that I can bask in that glory, I'm going to take it. And I know you feel the same way about the genre as well, Chris. But well, that I think does it for us today, everybody. Chris, before we get out of here, where can people stalk you in the best possible way on social media? And if you want to give a plug for your show as well, feel free.
You guys can follow me on Twitter at thatchris70. I talk about a lot of different stuff. You can kind of find it all there.
Perfect. Well, Chris, thank you as always for coming back on the show. This was a delightfully wonderful and terrifying discussion to have about Heretic, and you're always welcome back on the show. We'll get you closer for that record sooner rather
Yeah.
than later. But again, no, in all seriousness, no, I appreciate it, buddy, for having you come back on. And of course, everybody, you can follow this show on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your other favorite podcast. And if you are watching it on YouTube, I would appreciate a like and a subscribe. Helps with those pesky algorithms and all that fun stuff that goes with the channels and podcasting numbers. But on that note, thank you as always for tuning in. I'll be back next week and we will do this all over again for the love of movies.